I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts. Do-do-do-do. There they are standing in a row. Big ones, small ones, some as big as your head.
Gourmet number 30, Sunny.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome, the awe-inspiring, the action-packed, the little bit fruity tale of Toriko. I do apologize for the few days of absence. I was spending time with my family, and really I had tried to get, as far enough ahead as I could with all my reviews prior, but just wound up, running short of time, and unfortunately we missed a couple days of Toriko because of that. So rest assured, though, we will be back on track over here on our Monday through Friday schedule, even with the approaching New Year. So the last chapter, of course, saw us just briefly being introduced to at the end of the chapter, and not really even being introduced to, but seeing one of the four kings, Sunny, who we found out is Rin's brother, and it appeared as if he was carrying with one hand above his head this giant Regal Mammoth. We were also introduced to Gourmet Corp's little underlings, Bay and Jojo, and I don't know how they'll come into play with things. But that's how the chapter left off, though, was ultimately Sunny, walking up with this Regal Mammoth, and that's where things pick up. And really, this chapter, it's named Sunny, and it's named Sunny for a reason, because of the fact that it centers around really introducing us to Sunny of the Four Kings. Obviously, it's Rin's brother. He has this long, flowing sort of hair, that's multicolored, and really he's just kind of a fruity character, I guess, for lack of a better term. He walks up initially, and we wind up seeing first we wind up seeing Toriko and Mansom, and they've brought some of their food, some of Mansom's alcohol-drenched food with them, and they're eating, and Toriko's like, "Oh, this is really good. I can see why they say it, so I'm already buzzed, And Mansom and him are fighting over it, oh, sure, no, I'm not going to. And Komatsu's just like, I didn't even know them, But, so anyway, Rin's like, oh, there he is. And we go and we see Sunny then walking up all majestic, like with one arm up, holding this Regal Mammoth up above his head. And as he's starting to approach them and get closer, all of a sudden we see a whole... they're called Ganghoods. They're these reptiles, these really kind of neat-looking creatures, capture level 15, and there's obviously they roam in packs, gangs, Ganghood, and there's a bunch of them, and and they're like, oh my god, and Komatsu's like, Ganghoods, they're gonna go and try to take that Regal Mammoth from Sunny, and Toriko's just sitting there eating, doesn't even faze him. He's like, yep, and they'll fail. Just watch. So we wind up going and seeing, we don't really actually see anything that happens. We just see one of them go and rush him, and then we kind of see like a panel, a black panel, and just a, and then we see a couple more things like that, and then all of a sudden they show Sunny still walking through the pile of bodies, and they've all just fallen down. And Komatsu's like, oh Jesus, they've all been knocked out. Well, what the heck? How did he do that? He didn't even touch them, So that winds up kind of leading into to Sunny and what we see briefly in this chapter about his powers, or at least some of his abilities. He then goes and walks up, and of course he has this Regal Mammoth, and he goes and he says, "Hey, here, director, catch!" And he tosses this thing over to Director Mansom. Mansom's like, "God damn it, what the hell, And I just picture him that he talks like that, just like, "Sunny, you idiot," So you can tell that these two don't get along very well, because then Sunny goes and says something, and I imagine him just to kind of have a little bit more of a kind of a fruity voice, a little bit. I don't know. I guess he seems like he's a gay character, or very close to it at least. So because he's just kind of like, oh geez, with your ham-handed touch over there, director, you couldn't do this and that, and I see that you're still, he basically is making fun of him for being like this big brute, and. So then he goes and Sunny comes up and he's like, oh my, Toriko, you're looking well. Your cells have evolved so much and this and that. And Toriko's like, listen, man, don't touch me like that. That's creepy when you do that, And Komatsu goes, and that's when we find out about things. And Komatsu goes and says, Toriko, he didn't touch you. What was going on? And obviously he didn't touch those Ganghoods either. And he goes, and then you actually see too, when he was holding the Regal Mammoth, that he's actually floating it above his hand a little bit. For whatever reason or another, he has some kind of powers that I guess you would say are similar to like a telekinesis or something like that. He has these feelers where he can like touch people, not in a weird way, Well, I guess it's kind of in a weird way because it's kind of invasive and it's like a mental touch, I guess, you know. And then Toriko says, you know, yeah, he's little feelers. He's touched everybody here, you know. And Mansom's like, not everybody. And they point up to Terry, the wolf, and Terry's up there, and Sunny sees the battle wolf, and he says, oh my, a battle wolf, and this and that, you know. Oh, that's so nice, and oh wait, a clone, and blah blah. Usually most animals don't even notice my sensors, you know. So and you know, but obviously he has some respect that the battle wolf did. But so then he goes and he says something to him, and you know, it's something to the effect of, oh, it would make a great pet, you know. And Mansom's like, yeah, don't even think about it. He's already Toriko's, you know. He's already spoken for. So then we go and we see some banter, some brother and sisterly banter between the two of them, between Rin and Sunny, you know. And Sunny comes up and he's like, "Oh my God, those thunder thighs! They're just so gigantic!" And he starts making fun of Rin. He's like, "What have you been doing? Just eating nothing but sweets?" And she's like, "Shut up! Leave me alone, you idiot!" You know. And they start making fun of each other. And then, you know, he goes and says, "Jesus, you're like a man, girl," you know. And she's like, "Yeah, whatever, girly man." And so they're kind of arguing back and forth. So that's kind of where I get, and then just the whole chapter, the way he's depicted and everything else, that's where I kind of get that Sunny might play for the other team, you know, or maybe plays for both teams. I'm not really sure. So again, doesn't really bother me either way. That just seems like, from my observations, what his character is like, you know, a little bit on the kind of softer side, you know. So then we go and we get them, you know, talking a little bit about. Oh, excuse me. About the, you know, the. Oh, actually, you know what we wind up doing is we have. Mansom goes and he's like, okay, you know what? Enough of this nonsense with the introductions over here. We got to get to capturing the Regal Mammoth, you know. And Sunny's like, oh my God, isn't that what I just did? Look what, you know, look at what you got here, you know, Director Mansom type, you know, that type of thing, like, you buffoon. And he's, you know, and you should have thanked me for carrying it so gentle all the way here. And Mansom's like, yeah, you idiot. This is the baby. Okay, we need to go capture the actual, you know, the mother, the Regal Mammoth, the actual adult, you know? And everybody's like, what? And Komatsu's like, oh my God. And then they go and they show the next page, and it's kind of cool because this black, you know, it's all darkened in with, let me see if I can get it over here. Yeah, I can grab it real quick, like. So we wind up seeing, it's kind of, I thought it was kind of a cool picture that was done. We see, you know, the Regal Mammoth over there, and Komatsu's like, oh my God, that's just a baby? How much, you know, how humongous must the real, you know, the full-grown one be, right? How gargantuan must it be? And then the chapter ends up shortly after that. Now, if you remember back from last chapter, when Bay and Jojo were talking about if the GT robots that they sent in to capture the Regal Mammoth, while the other one controlled by Bay went into the Coliseum to distract Mansom and Toriko and company, you know, and they didn't really have any report on what had happened. They just sort of assumed that maybe they had gotten beaten to the punch or whatever. Well, this is kind of cool because you see in different panels, you actually see one coming up out of the water, and then you see one that looks like it's kind of got like its little anteater face, looks like it's kind of camouflaged, and then there's another one that's like riding on top of this cool looking animal, and he's got these reins, and there's like, you know, this cool looking, almost looks like a headdress. There's this cool stuff sticking out of the back. It almost looks like straw or something, you know. So we can see obviously that the four of these have landed. They've set foot on the island. You know, they even make mention of that. Toriko does. You know, he says, you know, Gourmet Corp has already set foot on this island. Let's not let him beat us to the mammoth. So really that's how the chapter ends up over there, as we get to see briefly that, you know, the one GT robot that Toriko had a little bit of trouble with. There's four of them now, and we assume that these four are all you know, the advanced, the newer models. However, we also have Toriko, we have Mansom, we now have Sunny, and then of course Rin and Komatsu as your kind of you know, as your kind of normal human type of people. So I think the shit's definitely going to start to go down pretty soon, and I just think that's kind of a neat thing the way it was done, because the size proportion with Sunny carrying that mammoth, who we wind up finding out towards the end of the chapter is a baby. I mean, it's just monstrous. I mean, this thing's like the size of, you know, like a 10-story building, right? On top of him, just enormous, you know. And that's the baby, you know. So it's kind of cool to see the scale of things, I guess, in this. So definitely a fun chapter and kind of a neat introduction to Sunny. And really, I guess my chapter question is going to lead into that. What are your thoughts initially now, for those of you, because I know there's many of you that are reading this along with me that are new to this series, and the veterans, that's fine too. You're welcome to comment as well, but put yourself in my shoes, my perspective here. When you first read this and you were on chapter 30 or whatever, and you first got introduced to Sunny, what were your initial thoughts or impressions about him? That's the chapter question. So I'm sure his character will evolve as all of them do, especially if they're a mainstay in the series. But where he is right now and just what you saw from this brief, one chapter introduction, what are your thoughts on Sunny? Leave your answer to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
Well, here's your Regal Mammoth, Director.
That's just the baby, you fruitcake.